You're listening to the Health and Happiness Podcast with Travis Kemper and
Lauren Maxwell. Each episode, we share easy to implement strategies to improve your health, happiness, and overall quality of life.
The capacity to learn is a gift. The ability to learn is a skill. The willingness to learn is a choice. Brian Herbert. Sounds like Sherbert. Classic comedy. How's it going, Travis?
Going great, Lauren. That was special. It's rainy and snowy here, which is always good when you live out west. We had great weather for our trip last weekend. Red Rocks was fun. It's a really cool venue. The comedy show was good.
Yay!
And we took Duke on like a 5.5 mile hike outside of Denver in the mountains, and I had no idea it was so beautiful there. It's like Flagstaff, but more hilly.
Oh,
Just 20 minutes west of Denver. So like your big pines.
That sounds so pretty.
Roses. I don't know what these are.
Sounds pretty.
It was gorgeous. How's it going, Lauren?
It's going great. We are officially moved into the new house. If you're not watching the YouTube version, you can't tell. But I have a whole new background behind me. So
it looks great.
Thank you. We're still trying to get everything organized and set up, but it's come a long way over the last week. Keely is loving her backyard and lounging outside, and we found this really cool new forest trail right next to where we live, which has been really fun to explore. Yeah. And not so great news, Flagstaff is kind of on fire, which I've been getting a lot of, like, Travis included, like phone calls and text messages like, hey, are you all right? How's that fire going? So we are safe, but the tunnel fire has been rapidly spreading because of all of the wind. And we've had a few friends who have had to evacuate their homes. Haven't heard anything about like whether their homes are okay. I think they're like on the edge of the fire and it hadn't hit their neighborhood yet as far as I had heard, but super scary. We have our friend's dog Tui, who might make some noises and appearances. He's staying with us this weekend, or at least for a few days while his parents are evacuated, so hopefully there will be some containment this weekend. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, fires during windy season are especially bad.
Yeah, I feel like it's super early to have a fire.
Yeah, me too.
Not a good
too.
Yeah, and they're like everywhere right now.
Yeah, and we had a better winter than you. So
yeah,
it's weird.
We had a terrible winter.
Hopefully, yeah, you did. So hopefully some of our rainy, snowy stuff will make it down your way.
Yeah, I hope so.
I have no idea where it's coming from.
So what are we going to talk about today, Travis?
Lauren, I want to ask you a question.
Okay.
What is your learning style?
I am a kinesthetic learning style. I definitely learn best by getting my hands on things and moving through them and feeling and exploring them. I think that's why I always liked science classes, because you got to do experiments, like hands-on experiments, which really helped me learn the material so much better. What's your learning style?
I would probably say auditory. I listen to podcasts and books and remember a lot of information from them. But when I read, I remember very little. And if Julia and I are watching a TV series, she often has to remind me what happened in the last episode. Like, I mean, not if like I just watched
well,
it.
Sure.
The next day or 2 days later, I won't remember anything. She'll bring something up and I'm like, that didn't happen.
What are you talking about?
And I'm not talking about small things. I'm like, somebody died.
Like major plot lines?
And I didn't remember that they died.
Oh my gosh. That's funny.
So how do we best learn? We have probably all heard of visual, auditory, kinesthetic, and reading and writing as learning styles. But today we're going to see if there is any evidence to support the belief that finding your optimal learning strategy will actually increase learning.
So what is a learning style? The term learning styles refers to the concept that individuals differ in regard to what mode of instruction or study is the most effective for them. Proponents of learning style assessments contend that optimal instruction requires diagnosing individuals' learning styles and then tailoring instruction according to those learning styles. The most popular learning styles today, I think they've changed over time, but they're the ones Travis mentioned: the visual, auditory, kinesthetic, and then reading and writing. So what is the level of belief in society, Travis?
Well, here's some statistics. Here's some statistics from the research studies we found. 90+% of all educators believe that students learn better when information is presented in their preferred learning style. 2.1% of the general public think learning style theory is incorrect.
So pretty pervasive.
Right. Yeah, almost everybody, including teachers, believe that learning styles are the best way to learn. The learning styles theory has essentially three major claims. The first claim of the learning styles theory is this: learners are different from each other. Those differences affect their performance, and teachers should take these differences into account. This is true and recognized by educators and cognitive scientists a lot. That is the first claim. The next claim is that learners have preferences about how to learn that are independent of both ability and content and have meaningful implications for their learning. The critical and specific claim of learning styles theory is that learning could be improved by matching the mode of instruction to the preferred learning style of each student.
Yes. So here's the thing. If I were to tell you, I want to teach you something, would you rather learn it by seeing a slideshow, reading it as a text, hearing it as a podcast, or enacting it in a series of movements?
Podcast.
Do you really think you could answer that without first asking what you were to learn? Like, what if I were teaching you a dance? Do you want to hear it through a podcast? You do
Learn. That's my learning style.
Okay, so Travis, do a pas de bourrée to a chassé.
Well, I'll do it after this podcast.
Okay.
Interrupt the recording.
So while that may seem like a silly example, the claim of the learning styles approach is that you could make a choice and improve your learning through that choice, independent of content. So like, even though Travis, I'm going to guess you probably have no idea what a pas de bourrée is.
Nope, that could be a plant. Apparently it's something in dancing.
But your learning style is auditory, so if I just tell you, do it like this.
Is a pas de bourrée a hat and a plant?
Yes.
Or in a pot? It's like a chia pet.
Yeah, like a chia pet, exactly. But like, if I were to explain it to you through words, it probably wouldn't make as much sense as like watching me and doing it if it were a dance. It's just, so anyway, what most research is showing is that learning styles actually do not really exist. This was mind-blowing to me when I first started doing the research, but hang on, just hang with us for a little bit. This is not to say that all learners are the same. Rather, there are a certain number of dimensions like ability, background knowledge, interests that vary from person to person and are known to affect learning. The learning styles theory says that if you are visual, you should learn better with a visual presentation of information than with an auditory one. If you are auditory, you should learn better with auditory materials than with visual ones. But there's virtually no evidence to support that learning styles are effective.
Yeah. So, very few studies have even used an experimental methodology capable of testing the validity of learning styles applied to education. No confirmation bias there, Lauren. Just accept it, use it for decades while preaching it as fact with no underlying supportive information.
And over 90% of educators believe it, and 2.1% of the general population think it is incorrect. Like,
Right.
Wow.
Solid.
Yeah.
A 2008 study finally divided students into groups on the basis of their learning styles. And then students from each group are randomly assigned to receive one of the multiple instructional methods. Students were then given a final test that was the same for all students. The theory was that if the instructional method matched the student's learning style, that they would significantly outperform students whose learning style differed from the instructional method. However, the results showed no interaction at all between learning style and instructional method. This wasn't the only study. They have reproduced this study dozens of times and found the same results. Another study in 2018 looked at whether anatomy students used study strategies that matched with their learning style outside of class and how this affected their course grades. The results showed that course outcomes were not correlated with any specific learning style for anatomy classes, but the students didn't even match their stated learning style with study strategies, which, Lauren, we'll have more information on later because we were those students in anatomy class.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, in anatomy class. Wow, we could have been in this study.
Right. And we would have failed as bad as they did.
Uh-huh. So another study measured two variables, academic achievement and learning satisfaction, and showed that, again, there's insufficient data to support learning styles theory. The head-to-head study found that in terms of both academic achievement and learning satisfaction in elementary kids, a multimodal approach was the superior way to learn, which I think makes a lot of sense and makes me, like, when I first read this research, I was really triggered because I was like, no, I'm a kinesthetic learner. I've always believed I was a kinesthetic learner. But then when we conclude that it's a multimodal approach, makes the most sense. I'm like, oh, actually, wait, no, you're right.
Totally
So,
makes sense.
yeah, we conclude, therefore, that at present, there is no adequate evidence base to justify incorporating learning styles assessments into general educational practice. Thus, limited education resources would better be devoted to adopting other educational practices that have a strong evidence base, of which there are an increasing number.
That was one of the conclusions from one of the studies.
Yes.
Lauren, I bought into learning styles enough that if you asked me before I looked into this research, I would have definitely had an answer. I probably would have said that it had value and was not a dumb belief. The research supports that everyone learns better with multimodal approaches. This is exactly what we did in PT school. I made flashcards from my notes, then tested you and or Julia, then you tested me back. This is reading, writing, auditory, and then because it was PT school and everything was about the body and movement, we were definitely using kinesthetic as well.
Yep. Yeah, I used every single, because I even would draw pictures. And so that's the visual learning part. Like,
there you go.
Every single learning style, even though I was dead set, like 10 days ago, I was like, I'm a kinesthetic learner. Like, even I answered the question when you asked me, as I would have 10 days ago, because I definitely learn better when I have hands-on. But then, like, look at all of this. Look at all of these strategies we used. It's crazy.
So silly.
So silly. So students differ in their abilities, interests, and background knowledge, but not in their learning styles. Students may have preferences about how to learn, but no evidence suggests that catering to those preferences will lead to better learning. So an application for the classroom would be to continue to present information in the most appropriate manner for the content and for the level of prior knowledge, ability, and interests of that particular set of students using a multimodal approach.
Yes. I have a theory as to why I cannot remember what happened in TV shows.
What is the theory?
My theory is that I don't care that much.
Well, that'll do it.
So I'm not that interested. And like my mindset when I go to watch TV it's like the last thing I do if I'm going to watch TV on any given day. And it's like the rest of the day is done. I'm turning my brain off.
Right.
And this is just like an act that I'm doing that means nothing to me before I go to bed.
That makes total sense.
It's just a relaxation technique. I'm there for entertainment. I'm not there to try and learn.
Yeah, that
In
makes
general.
total sense.
Yeah. So I'm sure it's different. If I tested myself after watching an episode of whatever TV show versus if I tested myself after watching a documentary, I guarantee you I will outscore myself watching the documentary, and it will have nothing to do with the media.
Yeah.
Like the way that it's brought, the medium, I think would be the
Yeah.
correct word. It's due to my interest level and what I am there for at that time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, Lauren, this is another one of those things that we've learned through society that we all know, in quotation marks for those listeners, and it's totally BS, and there's no evidence to support it. And the more that I question things, you brought this one, so I'm happy you brought this one, but the more that I question things, the more stuff I find that's just like this. All of the common knowledge in society, a lot of it is just total BS and means and has no backing in any research.
Yeah. It's kind of shocking, but also not.
So question everything that you hear.
Question everything. That's what I learned in PT school, I think.
Yeah,
that's like the
what
biggest
science
takeaway.
teaches us.
Yeah, question
Yeah.
everything.
Science literally teaches us to question everything. Lauren, this was fun.
This was really fun. I enjoyed this episode. Great job today.
We're switching back and forth.
I know.
like it. Great job today, Lauren. Thanks, everybody. And if you have not yet, please leave us a review. It really does help us out.
Thanks. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for taking the time out of your busy day to listen to this episode of the Health and Happiness Podcast. We hope you enjoyed the episode and are getting benefits from our content.
If your life is improving in part due to the information in this podcast, we would greatly appreciate you sharing the episode with your family and friends on social media and leaving us a review so we can continue to reach more people and improve the health and happiness of the community at large.
Thanks again, and we will see you next week for another episode of the Health and Happiness Podcast.